the unfortunate reality is that conventional SCADA licensing creates a lot of roadblocks on you and your quest, if you will, for making your automation projects as effective as possible. So we're going to talk about some of those roadblocks, and then we'll look at how Ignition removes them from your path when you're building out your projects. First pain point we'll discuss is the high cost of conventional licensing. SCADA software licenses have incremental charges for everything. For example, if you want to do 100 to 500 tags, you'll cost you one amount. If you want to go 500 to 1,000 tags, there's another amount. So you're always thinking about money when you're also thinking about projects, because there's a cost when you add something. These arbitrary charges add up very, very fast, and they could actually end up eating the lion's share of the average project's budget in some cases. Second roadblock is that conventional licensing is time consuming and takes a lot of effort when you have to deal with it on a daily basis and update it. As I said, each client is sold and installed separately. Each client takes several hours to install, certainly can, and you can have to activate a license for each client, which is a hassle. Often you have to spend time trying to figure out how to add something to your project without licensing costs for that license being added in, which isn't the most effective way to spend your time or to think about how to approach projects. Scalability is really important, because what you need today is not the same as what you'll need tomorrow. In today's world, it takes really a lot of sense to have a SCADA system that can be foundation, if you will, for digital transformation or IoT in your future. Those types of projects usually involve adding a lot of edge devices, sensors, and controllers, but with conventional SCADA licensing, it can be difficult, if not impossible, to add more additional sensors or devices after you've completed a project. So your digital transformation goal will just end up being a pipe dream, because it's not economically feasible to actually pull it off. Another, I would say, pretty big problem is that conventional licensing hinders innovation. The cost and labor intensiveness that I just talked about makes you have to settle for solutions that are less than ideal, or they're just not good, or just basically good enough, just barely to meet the requirements. It's disappointing to have a great idea for improving your control system, but not being able to make it happen because, well, of the constraints of licensing. One more issue that I just want to point out here real quickly is that more and more SCADA solutions on the market are moving to subscription models. This means that instead of paying once, you have ongoing payments, but you don't have full ownership of the software. It adds to the cost and in many different ways. You're always thinking about that, but it keeps you locked into having to pay over and over to keep your solution up and running. Even if the price subscription goes up, you're going to have to stay with that. That's my overview of sort of the big roadblocks, but now I'll take a minute here and like to hear from what our guests have to say, because they're the ones that have to deal with it on a regular and daily basis. So my overall question that I'm posing to the group here is, before you started using Ignition, did you run into any of these or other roadblocks in the projects you worked on, and how did that make it harder to meet your customers' needs? So I'm going to just ask each of you to comment on that. Might as well just start with you, Chris.
Oh, terrific. And you made some great points here in these particular 5 points. Some of the things that you need to think about is, of course, time and labor intensive. That's interesting. It's one thing to have to figure out how to scope a system and count the tags correctly, right? It's another to have to go back to the customer again and again and again and ask for more tags because of this, that, or another situation that has arisen as the system's scope was, expanded, the system's capabilities were expanded. Quite frankly, another interesting thing is that over the years, many of these systems that have these more restrictive licensing, how many times have we sat there as developers, let's say, and said, how can I get around this? How can I use an analog register instead of an analog input? How can I do more in the PLC maybe and bring less to the HMI? That kind of engineering workaround is time intensive and takes away from the value add of any project. So, and hinders innovation, quite frankly. So it is restrictive in many ways, and sometimes in ways that we just normalize the behavior and don't even think about, what we're doing to cut off our nose to spite our face.
Thanks, Chris, for your comments on it. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, there's a couple things that immediately jump out when I think about these 5 bullet points. We work with a lot of customers that have thin client setups, and when you consider adding to a thin client environment, you need to consider a couple of things. You need to know how many HMI clients you have available, client licenses, how many thin client licenses you have, and if you have the right amount of RDS cals for your server. So right there, when you think about expanding a system like that, you have 3 different licenses that you need to consider before being able to implement. We also run into a lot of situations where our customers have limited display counts in their SCADA application, and they're asking us to make modifications, changes, additions, and we get hindered by those display counts because we simply can't add anything else onto the application. And another thing that just jumped to the forefront of my mind, because I dealt with it recently, is the software I'm thinking about right now has you license by tag count, but if you want to expand that system, it doesn't always count the previous tags that you have already licensed. And so if you have a 500 tag license and you use up all 500 tags, in order to add on to that, you need to purchase, the next tier up. You can't just add 100 more tags. So all 3 of those are situations that I've run into in the last 12 months that really get in our way as integrators to deliver good solutions for our customers.
Thanks, Sean. Nathan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just expand on that a little bit. Back in developing in other softwares, one of the common themes was how much you could get in the fewest number of screens. So there was a fair amount of trying to figure out how to stack pop-ups inside of windows or inside of a screen so that you reduce your number of screen count. And that became not only a pain to develop in the first place, but it was not fun to sort through after the fact. So those limitations definitely hindered the best solution from being available.
Thanks to all of you for your comments. Actually, I think the things that you're talking about there are really the things that when I first met Steve, I've known our founder for going on 40 years now, but when we first started working together and he had the project to getting started with Ignition, he was an integrator for a couple decades, and he experienced some of this pain. And that was really, when you think about it, to solve all of these roadblocks that we're talking about here, that was the reason for introducing unlimited licensing. He didn't want the integrator to think about those things. He wanted to think about doing a good project for the customer. It goes back really to our founder and his thinking at that time. Because he was a systems integrator and he'd done it for many years, he had just gotten frustrated by licensing models of conventional SCADA software. He knew there had to be a better way, so he introduced unlimited licensing as part of Ignition. And it's one of the core pillars of inductive automation. One of the basic things we're founded on is unlimited means that Ignition is sold by the server. And there are no limits to number of tags, clients, devices, designers, reports, and so on. The only real limits are what your hardware can support and what your imagination can dream up. So you can connect your whole facility for one surprisingly affordable price. With Ignition, you get unlimited tags, clients, screens, etc. As I said, one price. It costs a fraction of what conventional licensing costs, and it only uses up a small portion of a project's budget, so you can spend the money and the time to do the project right. As I said earlier, with traditional licensing, most of the budget can get allocated to software licensing. With unlimited licensing, most of the budget can be allocated to the actual implementation. Another great thing is that instead of being time-consuming and laborious, Ignition's unlimited licensing is fast, it's easy. You can simply add new tags, devices, clients, without having to add new licenses. And it's easy to get started. You download Ignition in only 3 minutes, has a quick start feature, lets you start designing projects in no time. All of this gives you more time to focus on what's really important, which is, of course, building your innovative solutions. Also, unlimited licensing helps you future-proof your system. You don't know where it's going to go or what you're going to want to do with expanding that project. Ignition grows along with your company. So you can buy one license to connect your entire facility. Later on, when the organization grows, you can easily add more sensors or devices, or you can buy multiple licenses to connect to multiple facilities. This affordable scalability is what enables you to expand solutions across the enterprise and to successfully undertake digital transformation or your IoT initiatives. It's really ready to start now and ready to grow into the future. Instead of hindering innovation, unlimited licensing empowers it. Problem solvers in the Ignition community, some of whom you're going to hear from today, often tell us that Ignition lets them just say yes. I remember in the early days, we had a webinar we did very early on, and Steve was still involved very much in all of the content. And he had a slide show we put together called Shooting Fish in a Barrel. And Shooting Fish in a Barrel was just like, hey, with Ignition, it's easy. You can do what you need to do. And one of the slides was when a customer gives you a problem, just say yes. You'll be able to figure it out with Ignition, so just say yes and then figure it out. Nearly anything the customer wants, you can be able to deliver. Because it's so affordable, they have opportunities to try new things without having to justify heavy licensing fees. If I can borrow an anecdote from Steve, our founder, when we launched Ignition in 2010, we were entering a mature market with a lot of incumbents. I can remember going to trade shows down in Houston where people were saying, you know, our competitors told us, you're doomed to fail. They thought we wouldn't make money with unlimited licensing model. You can't do that. This is a mature market. All these reasons why Ignition and Inductive was going to fail. But that was kind of a short-sighted way to look at it. We discovered that when you remove the old technological and economic barriers and give those people a powerful platform to work with, you open up vast new worlds where people can innovate. And that has led to great success, both for our customers and for our company with that mindset. And as I said, more SCADA software is being sold as a subscription these days. Ignition has always been sold under a perpetual license model. That means you only pay for each license once, and then you have full access to it from then on. And with Ignition, you can add, as it's mentioned, it's just what tags you need, what connection you need, what device you need, et cetera, et cetera. The license allows you to do whatever you want to do, and you just have to handle whatever the hardware is needed in order to actually handle all of that.